Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Good to see all your fantastic faces. Hello, all. It's been a long time. Autumn, winter, and now almost in spring, and we're back. February 2025. It's been a while, hasn't it, Lorraine? Hello.
It has certainly, hasn't it? Although the time seems to have whizzed past. But yeah, we've both been particularly busy, I think, on different fronts. But it is good to get these webinars up and running again on a monthly basis to just chit chat off the cuff a lot of the time on all things HMO and share our experience and knowledge.
So we've got a little bit of new branding, and we're going to try and get ourselves out on social media and all of that. So it's very exciting, and we're looking forward to to answering some of the burning questions that people have, and some very, very interesting topics that we've had. I can see a few new faces and a few familiar ones. Welcome, everyone. We will have Q&As at the end. And we're going to be very strict in terms of our timing because we have to,
We are, aren't we,
we have
Kunle?
to. Absolutely, absolutely, we will do. There's still a few people joining,
Yes.
but as people join, we'll let them in, and please just remind people to go on mute. We have a special guest today, which is fantastic. So, and I can see he's right there. Tom, thank you so much for joining.
Hi, Tom.
We'll
Good to
we'll
see you.
talk to you
Thank you
soon.
for joining us.
Nice to see everybody.
Um, and uh, Before we enter the usual disclaimers, I have to just say it's half term here where I am, so there might be kids wandering in and out and pets and stuff. I've banned them all, but they never listen to me anyway.
That's why you have your noise reduction earphones on, isn't it, Kunle?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Love it,
So
love it.
Lorraine, disclaimers.
Disclaimers, we're not teaching, we're not saying that you should do things like this. We're just passing on and sharing our experiences in the HMO industry. Is that good enough? Yep.
That's fantastic. We're sharing our experiences, and we always recommend finding really good experts and working with them. We will give you the benefit of our experience, but we're not here to train, we're here to share our journey. So fantastic. So we've been away for a wee while. Lorraine, do you want to
Yeah.
share what you've been getting up to?
Yeah, I think what I've been getting up to is very different to what you've been getting up to, Kunle. So we've been, adding to the portfolio in a rinse and repeat kind of fashion, like we do. As you probably know, I spent 2 months over the winter cycling in the Canary Islands. So yeah, property for me is all about lifestyle too. So there has to be that balance. Um, so yeah, we're stuck very much with our model, rinse and repeat, kind of diverging a little bit into the social housing sector now to see, which is very different to your approach, Kunle, isn't it? Because we kind of rinse and repeat and pop them into the portfolio, either on guaranteed rent or acquisitions, whereas you go big. Yeah.
Yes, I do, Lorraine, but I'm from a standing start. I've been catching up quickly. I've been catching up quickly, but yeah, no, social housing and supported living is a very, very exciting area. And In terms of the topics that we're going to be covering in 2025, I think that's got to be one of them, right?
Mhm.
But we're open. We've got our WhatsApp group. Hopefully, most of you guys are in the WhatsApp group, or you can contact us, or see our social media handles, etc. Go to the website, mondaygroup.com, to see all the recordings, YouTube, of course. But Today, we are doing Article 4, which is something that's been requested and people have been talking about a lot. And of course, it's been something that I've been grappling with quite recently, because as you said, Lorraine, we've we've been busy. We've since the last version, we've closed our large portfolio of large HMOs, 8-figure deal, which came with another 7-figure valuation for land as well. So yeah, we've been really busy. But the whole topic has been, has been very close to our hearts, making sure that the planning is in place, and making sure that all the sort of regulatory requirements are in place. And no matter if you've got, a 3-bed HMO or a, 26-bed HMO, it's still very, very relevant to your local area. Yeah. What else? What else can I say? Well, I've also been, from a lifestyle perspective, as you said there, Lorraine, enjoying myself a little bit. In the winter, I love to ski. I skied probably a little bit too enthusiastically this winter, so I've done my knee in. Just had an MRI scan, so I'm walking around a little bit like Quasimodo at the moment. But I think it's healing fast, so I might get back up those slopes by the end of March, mid to the end of March. Cross fingers. But as you said, we do this because we enjoy it, and it's a way to finance our lifestyles. So yeah, welcome one and
Yeah,
all.
we've still got people entering, currently. I'm kind of letting them in, but I think if we are going to stick to our time scale, we probably should deep dive into the subject. I'm going to be the timekeeper. Watch out. Um,
Absolutely. Yeah, we've got a little time thing on the top right hand here, so absolutely. Let's dive right in. So today,
okay.
Article 4, we've got 4 key things to look out for in terms of Article 4. And we're going to take a little, take things in turn. What's the first thing, Lorraine?
I think the first thing is just really defining what Article 4 means in relation to HMOs because it is quite confusing for people. Um, so, Article 4 isn't just relevant to HMOs, although we think of them in relation to HMO conversions and regulating those, they can be used for other things as well, which is just important to point out, for example, for conservation areas and different ways of councils regulating what's happening in a specific area. With regards to Article 4 or Article 4 directions and HMOs, basically, it's the removal of permitted development rights to convert a single dwelling house into a house of multiple occupancy. And that's the really important point for us as HMO investors to remember. You can't just convert any house into a HMO, and you can't do that if it's in an Article 4 area. You have to apply for planning permission to do so. And obviously, there's lots of cities like Nottingham's well known and Leicester too, where your chances of actually getting planning permission to convert a house to HMO are very, very, very severely reduced because there's already a high percentage of HMOs in those areas. So traditionally, councils have used this as, like you'll agree, I'm sure, to kind of have a greater control over the housing stock in an area, to maintain the character of an area, of a neighbourhood, to address issues like overcrowding, parking pressures, not having 2 HMOs and not enough family residential homes in a specific area. So basically, that's what it is. Is there anything you wanted to add to that?
Yeah,
In that
Article
kind of
4.
definition, it was a very kind of quick definition, but it's basically you can't, if you're in Article 4 area, as it is defined, you can't go and take a house and change it to an HMO without planning permission.
Absolutely. Article 4 is very specific. There are maps that show you the precise Article 4 areas. And it's as you said there, Lorraine, it's used as a tool of control by local authorities. They have to agree it, and then they have to declare it and give notice that it's going to come into effect. And just as much as local authorities use it for control, us investors, us property investors, use it for control. And there are opportunities, and there's pros and cons which we can go into. But
Yeah.
for example, it's quite common if you have a border and down the street and one side is in Article 4 and one side isn't. Of course, people are going to be trying to do things on the edges. So there are, as I
Mm.
said, it's around control, and there are different ways and ins and outs. But it's all very local specific, isn't it? But
Yeah.
how do
And
we
it's always
find out?
changing. I think it's important to say as well, isn't
Yes,
it? Those
well
areas are
said.
always changing. For example, in Leicester, it initially came in 2014, and then it was added to in 22, 23. Extra areas were
Mm.
added into that Article 4 direction. But I think you were just going to ask me, weren't you, what are the best
Yeah, it's
ways
always.
to find out?
Well, I know that you've got the three best ways to find out if you're in an Article 4 area, Lorraine. Let's go for it.
The three best ways to find out if you are in an Article 4 area are the local authority website. So some have interactive tools. For example, in Leicester, we've got a great interactive tool where you put in the postcode and it will show you which areas are conservation areas, which areas are Article 4 areas, which are the new Article 4 areas. So that's really great. But regardless, you should be able to Google and find out Article 4 directions for HMOs in
Mm.
your area for the local authority and download that as a PDF. They're usually available to find. So you can see they list the areas, they give them names, they list all the streets, and they have a little map. And you can usually find that for your local authority. That's number one. Number two is like we love power teams, don't we, Kunle, and working with experts. So number two is to work with a planning consultant or an architect to get that information because they should know all about that for your area. So that's always a shortcut too. And then the third way that occurred to me, and I know you use this a lot as well, is different
Mm.
mapping tools that are out there. For example, on Property Filter, you can see the Article 4 areas, and then Nimbus. And I think you mentioned Searchland to me, which I've not actually heard of.
Yes, Searchland is a relatively new addition, and there are a few others as well. And
Yeah, like
essentially,
property
they're all
data, I should imagine, and stuff, aren't they? And
exactly.
Searchland, is that a paying portal then? I don't know that one.
Oh yeah, it's paying. It's a
Yeah,
high
they're all
end.
paying.
It's similar to Nimbus in that it's a sort of specialist developer thing. So you're
Okay.
paying several thousands per
All
annum.
right. Okay. Okay. So yeah,
I
they're
was
the three ways, three clear ways have been, crystal clear in an area um of your properties in the Article 4 or not. Um so you've got a property, you've found out if it's in an Article 4 area or not. Why would you say that you would actually want to invest in an Article 4 area? What are the like advantages or pros in your opinion, Quinley, of doing so?
Great question, Lorraine.
Thank
Yes,
you.
why would you? Absolutely. Why would you invest in an Article 4 area? It's a pain, it's more documentation, it's more regulation. Why would it? Why would you bother? So I can give you five good reasons why you would invest in an Article 4 area. And I'd love to hear what people think. But my item one is the protected market position. Um, for me, one of the key things I look for as I'm growing my business is are there protections? Is there a high barrier to entry? Yeah, preferably I'm already, within that barrier to entry. But if it's a high barrier to entry and you can get into that, then you're protected. People tend to, work on the edges and do the easy stuff. But the higher stuff actually means you're protected and therefore you've got a longer lasting investment. When you have an Article 4 designated area, you're sort of reducing the competition and increasing the value of those properties to give a sort of stronger commercial value. Um, you were talking about those three ways of, knowing how you're in an Article 4 area. Um, I actually had HMOs in Coventry, and I only found out that Article 4 was coming, so to speak, through speaking to my planning advisor. And I was hopping and skipping because I'd bought in that area and it kind of came into that area and I knew, and I've recently remortgaged a couple of years after Article 4 came, about 18 months after Article 4 came into place in Coventry, and I've been reaping the benefits of those strong capital appreciations, which was the second one. I'm moving things around a bit, but strengthening the prospects of your financing. Yeah, lenders like a bit of Article 4, so do we. And therefore, as long as you have your planning up to date, and as you said there, Lorraine, you need retrospective planning if you don't have it in place when Article 4 comes in place. And sometimes Article 4 might come in place and you're not aware. Certainly recently, one of my HMOs licensing, not the Article 4 side of things, but mandatory licensing came in place. It's a 4-bed HMO. And I wasn't aware, so I got a phone call. It's like, okay, so then you have to get everything in place, and all your paperwork and everything in place. But the prospects for financing and refinancing are increased and they are strengthened. Consistent tenant demand is number 3. Now, Article 4 also coincides with high demand, highly sustainable, as the architects using architectural language, highly sustainable locations, such as student hubs or major cities, and therefore it ensures a steady flow of potential tenants, and therefore you can raise the standards and make sure you pick the best customers, so to speak. So consistent tenant demand is number 3. Also improved tenant profiles because of that, right? So because you can attract, for example, a target type of tenant or customer. So you want professional tenants, or you prefer students, and you've made your accommodation fit for that particular profile. So you can really hone in on a particular profile because you do have that sort of the scale around the location. And lastly, potential for capital growth, I would say. Because you've got that high moat, it's easier to refinance. There's a greater deal of trust in terms of the finances, and therefore the properties are regulated, and therefore often have at least national property price increases. I will say I bought my HMOs in. I've obviously done a lot of work with them, but they have doubled in price since 2019, since I bought them, doubled in value. So there you go, potential for capital growth. Lorraine, what do you think? Would you invest in an Article 4 area?
I love Article 4 areas. Yeah, absolutely. I absolutely love Article 4 areas, but I am going to play devil's advocate with you, Kunle, and suggest some disadvantages of investing in Article 4 areas. But yeah, our strategy is predominantly Article 4 areas. Yeah, definitely. Like you say, they're the areas that are often close to the city centre that are we know that our property prices in those areas are stable and will always be in demand. And even if Article 4 or the HMO sector collapse, we could repurpose those houses without too much trouble because they're in kind of prime locations. In Aaron's terms, they meet the 6 Cs, yeah, in insight terms, definitely. But there are some disadvantages, I would say. Like you said, the barrier to entry is higher, so it's a lot easier to start investing and find properties outside of Article 4 areas. I know people who struggle for quite a long time because they're wanting properties in Article 4 areas, but it's hard to find them. Like it's depending on the market at the time, it is definitely more challenging to pick up good properties. You have to increase your marketing, I would say, and have lots of different marketing strategies in place to get those opportunities. Um, another disadvantage, I guess, is the fact that you do require planning permission. So if you are converting a property into an HMO in an Article 4 area and it wasn't an existing HMO, you have got to get planning permission, which it can be time consuming. It adds extra time to that investment journey. And it can be expensive, and there's absolutely no guarantee of the outcome either. So there's certain cities where it's, pretty sure that you would absolutely not get planning permission for a new HMO in an Article 4 area. So um, also a point that Tom, I'm sure, is going to talk to us about afterwards is that even if you have got you're buying an existing HMO, you've often got to prove the right to operate as an HMO. So that means that you're not applying for new planning permission, but you're applying for retrospective planning permission and what's known as a certificate of lawfulness, or an LDC. Um, and that isn't always easy to get, like I can assure you that is not always easy to get. And sometimes it can take months to get, because you usually have to prove that the property was let as a HMO from before Article 4 directions came in up to the present date. So for example, in Leicester, that would be from 2014 to now. And so you have to prove that you've got ASTs for the whole of that period, that there was no break in that HMO rental documentation. And if the property was let even for, 3 months in Leicester as a single let, then it's null and void. You won't get retrospective planning. So it obviously adds a level of complication to it. And that's why, we're always saying on the chat, I mean, it's often a subject of conversation, isn't it? But, it's really
Yes.
important to get that retrospective planning prior to completion. And at the very, very least, make sure you've got all the documentation from the seller to be able to get it. So that's a big no-no, if you like. Well, not a no-no, but it adds a level of complication, time and cost-wise to investing in Article 4 areas. I guess another reason would be maybe you might consider that was saturation in Article 4 areas. It does reduce competition, like you said before, Kunle, but some areas might be oversaturated, which could then limit your rental growth potentially, and increase the possibility of voids, one might argue.
Absolutely.
They're often the areas, I think, that people come into when they're coming into an area to work. So there's a higher tenant turnover. We find that our HMOs in Article 4 area, the tenants stay less time than they do in the properties outside of Article 4 areas. We find the areas outside of Article 4, they're more kind of local people and they stay much longer. We've kind of tested it and looked at all the lengths of ASTs to prove the point, but there's a far higher tenant turnover in the Article 4 areas. And I guess that the last reason not to might be that in an Article 4 area, sometimes there's a bit of a negative perception of HMOs because there are more of them. So sometimes like local communities are against them a bit. Neighbours don't always like having an HMO. Understandably, next door, there's sometimes more noise, more coming and going, more cars, more disruption. So it can lead to kind of more complaints and scrutiny, I guess, as well. So, there we are. I think we found some good reasons to do it and some reasons maybe to consider not doing it.
Absolutely. I mean, you know me, Lorraine. I like a challenge. So
Don't we all?
some
Don't we
of
all?
those cons, yeah, some of those
I
cons
was
are
playing
actually good
devil's
reasons.
advocate. I love Article 4 areas.
Absolutely, but the market saturation one is scary because ultimately it
Yeah.
can reduce. It can mean there's too much competition and prices go down, and you have to be very careful, and also be very careful to distinguish your accommodation from others in the marketplace, from your competition. So yeah, no, it's definitely wise words, but not something that would deter if you're really really, really keen to get into HMOs. We certainly would recommend it, without doubt. So
So what we thought
top
we'd do,
tips.
yeah, what we
Yes,
thought we'd
you
do is like to keep, because we're obviously keeping this short and we are putting together a resource with far more information about this, aren't we? But we wanted to keep it kind of a bit off the cuff, kind of chit chatty, so people can ask questions. Um, but we did want to just suggest our kind of top tips for navigating Article 4 in 2025, didn't we? Things to be. Da, da,
should have a
da.
little gong. I should have a little gong just to kind of go, boom, yes, top tips for 2025. We put our heads together a little bit here, and we would love to hear from you guys on the call right now. But 2025 is so far proving to be being a fantastic and challenging year for us. We're doing £10 million remortgage right now, out of a bridge into a mortgage. But we're also being offered stuff, and we're looking at different areas for HMOs. But in 2025, one thing I'll say right off the cuff, right, is that, and this is one of the points I've been making on the WhatsApp groups, 2025 right now is a buyer's market. Yeah, the whole
Definitely,
thing with stamp
definitely.
duty, regulation, all of these things, and house
Compliance,
prices
yeah,
in
yeah.
real time over the last 2 years, because of the inflation and house prices not keeping up with that. There's real time uh, downward pressure in prices, and so what I would say to you guys is don't be too desperate for landing that deal. Drive a hard bargain because there are deals out there. There are other deals out there. So really,
Yeah.
it's
And
a
like
good
you
way of
said
going into.
recently to somebody, didn't you? I can't remember who it was, but like don't be afraid to walk away, because sometimes we try to get that round peg into a square hole, square peg into a round hole. I'm not quite sure which way it is, but if it doesn't stack up, you haven't, if there's just no documentation or proof that it's been an HMO in an Article 4 area. You've just got to weigh it up, haven't you? And not, like you say, that they are like buses. There are more that will come, and they usually come together as well.
Absolutely. You and I love a deal, Lorraine. And I think the people on this call love a deal. However, we're not desperate for deals. Remember that it's a buyer's market right now. It'll be interesting what Tom thinks when we talk to him in a few minutes. But that leads directly into the first of our four top tips: due diligence. Do
Yes,
your due diligence. You were talking about the conversation with Daniel, I think it was Daniel,
I think
on
so. Yeah.
WhatsApp, and he's got property which he clearly really wants, and the landlord is sort of playing hard to get, right, and saying, "Oh well, you can do the application for the certificate of legal development." Um, there he is. There you are. I didn't realize you finally got your videos, and that's what you look like. Okay, good to see you. But what I will say to you is there are plenty of deals out there, and therefore, if you do your due diligence, you will know what you have to do, and you know the actual costs, in time as well as effort as well as monetary. So, but at the moment, the good news is there are more products out there than ever before. As of today, I read something in another WhatsApp group. There are actually more products out there. There are more 80% mortgage remortgages, buy-to-let remortgages out there, including for HMOs, than ever before. So, and money is getting cheaper despite all the best efforts of the incumbent government, should we say, because it's all been priced in. And I think as the stuff that's happening across the water settles down and people can kind of feel a little bit more stability, I think again, I'm inching into what Tom is going to. I'm going to ask you these questions, Tom. So that's the first one in terms of do your due
Okay.
diligence. Lorraine, any other top tips?
Yeah, in my opinion, there's still opportunities, on the edge of Article 4 areas, because like we said, those boundaries are always changing. So that can be quite interesting. Do your research on your area, what's happening and where it's likely or it's been, because as you said, it takes quite some time for Article 4 direction for HMOs to come in. So find out where it's being expanded to, and that's often a little area of opportunity to buy in those patches that aren't yet Article 4, but Article 4 is coming in or being expanded to. I think the other opportunity
Absolutely.
at the moment within Article 4 areas is retiring landlords. You know, there are heaps of landlords retiring. We're seeing portfolios being sold off left, right, and centre. And if you like, as we do, the strategy of BRRR, I think it's labelled nowadays, buy, refurbish, rent to refinance, then it's great if you can, you know, get hold of those retiring landlords inside an Article 4 area, and that you get the uplift either through the addition of rooms or adding on suites. So you're making a better product and get an uplift on the commercial valuations. So there are definitely opportunities within Article 4 areas, I would say, in 2025.
You're giving all my secrets away, Lorraine.
But
You're
just
giving
don't
all
come
my
near Leicester,
secrets
please,
away.
or Coventry, or Hull, or.
But you know what, right? If you've been doing this for a few years, right? And this is I'm actually speaking about that big deal that we just did that we closed in December. If you've been doing it for a few years and you've had your cut, then you know it might getting the money and leaving right now instead of thinking, okay, I have to get my head around a whole new set of regulations, a whole new set of things that I need to do. As you said, Article 4 shifting, there's more and more regulations that are coming in for HMO landlords. So, I like to think big. So if someone's thinking, well, you know what, I'll just take my cash and get out, this might be a great opportunity for you. So I love that tip, Lorraine.
Thank you. And have you got any more tips for us, Kunle?
Well, the final one, I think we've hinted about it before. Always make sure you have documentation to prove your right to operate as an HMO in an Article 4
Definitely,
area.
definitely.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you yourself are a font of wisdom in this, but always talk to your power team, develop the best people. One thing that even we found, we all use AI, but be careful using
Be
AI.
careful,
There's a
yeah, be
lot,
careful what comes
you know,
up.
you look at the top tips or whatever in AI, and it'll take the context and subtly change it. And if you've not got the experience, you might think this is the word of law. So do
Yeah,
not be careful of AI.
yeah, yeah,
Great
yeah,
tool for generating content, but be very, very careful of AI. Speak to your power team, speak to the
yeah.
people around you, and always make sure you have that documentation. Be very, very
Yeah,
careful because
I think that is massively, massively important, Kunle, what you're saying. Again, I'm sure Tom's going to comment on this afterwards, but not only from a lending perspective are we seeing it that it is, you know, being asked for all the time, but it could well become a requirement for a licensing perspective, because currently, you know, many councils don't even ask for proof that, you know, that you've got proof that you can operate as an HMO. They just they have a little disclaimer on the Leicester licenses to say, you know, we're assuming you've got planning permission to operate as an HMO when they give you your license. But I mean, that could soon change as well. And the licensing part of the council suddenly starts asking for proof too. So, you know, like just really make sure you've got time to do an LDC during the conveyancing period anyway. If the seller doesn't want to do it, you can offer to do it for them. You can even pay for it. You know, it might cost you £1,000 all in, but at least you've got that information that you need for future proof in your HMO, really. I think it's because it's so much
absolutely.
harder. Like, you know, 10 years, we had to go back a year to the seller. I had to go knocking on his door with boxes of chocolates to get the information from him. At the beginning, he didn't want to know. It took months. Chocolates. I'm here again. Please find your old ASTs for me. But you know, that's so much easier to do all of that before you complete as opposed to afterwards. Really is important,
Well
in my
said.
opinion. Yeah.
Well said.
Okay, we're
Okay.
see, we're
Thank
running
you.
late. When told you, told
Onwards
you,
and
told you.
upwards. Onwards and
Tom,
upwards. Let's
let's
go.
get
Let's
Tom
go to
on.
it.
We've got to
So
go.
I can see some questions in the chat, so please do keep it up. I can see people busy writing away, but do do save those questions for just after we talk to Tom. I'll let you introduce. I'm very excited about this. I'm excited about 2025. So Lorraine, go away while I contain my.
Oh, have you frozen? So, Cunley, have you frozen? That's your high definition Zoom package. Okay, we'll continue. I'm not quite sure. Is it just me that Cunley's frozen for? Is he frozen for you all?
Frozen for
Okay.
everyone.
He's frozen for everyone, has he? Okay. Maybe if we're talking, he can unfreeze. Tom, do you want to unmute?
Yeah.
Hi, so yeah, really pleased to introduce Thomas Clark, or Tom, to you from Napex Finance, who specialises in HMOs and finance for HMOs, and is undoubtedly one of the most knowledgeable people that I've met in this sector. So yeah. I know Cunley wanted to. Sorry, I've got a little message saying I'm the host now, so I'm not quite sure what's happened to him. Let him sort his IT out. But I know that he, first of all, wanted to ask some kind of general questions to you, Tom, about the HMO market in general and where it's going, and are we indeed seeing more lenders come into the sector?
Yeah, well, actually today's a good day to kind of start with that. So we've got new lenders coming into the HMO space all the time, and I think the big reason for that was if you look at the buy-to-let lenders where they've been traditionally very busy with refinances and purchases, but with the way where the rates are at the moment, those buy-to-let purchases are pulling back. So the lenders are having to reinvigorate their sort of their lending policies, in particular the banks, to kind of to come after that market. So the HMO market is a clear and sort of obvious place for them to come into, in particular the Article 4 area, actually. So if it has got an Article 4, the lenders know that that crystallises that particular HMO value. Or as you know, they start to look at the bricks and mortar value of the property. But yeah, so today we've had the launch of Alica. Alica is typically a commercial lender, and they brought quite an interesting product into the space, which is more for the 7-bed plus products, where they're actually talking about lending off market value. And a lot of lenders don't like to talk about this, but they all have different values that they lend off and don't like to declare it. And we love grilling them on it. So the market value is often completely different to what the actual value that they lend off. So if I give you an example of a big one we've got like a big 20-bed HMO, and the market value on that might be £2 million, but the investment value might be 1.7. So Alica's product will go to 75% of the market value and up to 90% of the investment value. So I'd actually give him a bit of a pat on the back. There was a few things that wound me up there, but I'll give him a pat on the back for actually coming in and innovating in the market. So the lenders have to drive market share. So if they're not getting it from buy-to-let and residential, they will be turning their attention to our view where like the HMO market is probably undeniably seen as sort of the new buy-to-let market at the moment. Do new buy-to-let with where the rates are and returns are in a lot of those areas. That's why HMO is so much more attractive.
So are we like Cunley said, are we seeing products come in at more than 75% loan to value then?
Yeah, you've got some 80% products in there now.
On term lending, yeah?
On term lending. The challenge with some of those 80% products, like the Kent Alliance product, is there's sometimes it's bricks and mortar, sometimes it's investment. So the Kent Alliance product, for example, will go to 80% of investment value, and they are using that panel. So you've seen mixed performances on that particular product at the moment. So you're getting more 80% products in there. And HMOs are ideal for it because they usually produce so much more income in comparison to a buy-to-let. So they tip up as well.
But you've got less guarantee with that at the moment then that you're going to get the investment value. That's the thing, isn't it?
The market,
yeah. I mean, investment value and who the lenders use from a valuation point of view is absolutely critical to us, and also how much selection they give to the customer. I.e., are they I'll give you the polar opposite. On a small HMO, they might be sending out columns, even in an article 4 area, whereas a different lender will be sending out an investment-based valuations, and those reports can vary in thousands in terms of what they cost. You get two completely different values. So knowing what the lenders lend off, knowing the values they lend to, and which panel managers they're using is really critical. So yeah, we're pleasantly pleased with some of the lenders that are coming into the HMO space. We've got more coming into that investment value space, because we had lots and lots in the bricks and mortar space, which is they're just lending off the value of a house, which is okay if you're in a high value area, but if you're in a low value area, that's when it starts to become a challenge. So yeah, we're seeing more of that, and we want a competitive market, and bizarrely, so do the lenders. There's no lenders like to be the only one or two at 80%. They want at least 6 or 7 of them at 80%, because it means that they're not getting every bit of business in that particular space, which sounds mad, but that is what we want. I'm the ex-head of lending, and I've sat there and been there, so and understand that particular space.
Tom, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Right, I'm back. Okay, sorry. My internet sort of
It's
fluctuated
struggling with
there.
your mic a little bit though, Tom.
Is
There's a
it?
couple of comments on the
Oh.
chat with your sound that people are struggling with.
On my sound, is that?
Yeah.
I can probably change it to a different one in a second.
Let me know if this one's better.
Yeah, that
Yes,
sounds better to
that's
me. Yeah,
better.
definitely. So
Yeah.
we've got more lenders
Yeah.
coming in. That's really good. And the rates, where are they
Yeah,
going?
I wanted to ask a little question there, really. Tom, if you can hear me, sorry for my absence there.
You froze suddenly.
2025. Am I frozen again?
No, you did
No,
freeze,
you're
but
good.
I
you were
did.
quite comical.
I heard you say I froze, and then I heard it, and then everyone was like sort of slowly melted away. But I am back. So, but Tom, yeah, thanks for taking the time with us. But 2025, the established wisdom is that rates are still, it's priced in that rates will fall gradually, and despite the efforts of orange man babies across the ocean, should we say? I don't know if you've seen that, but
Yes.
but once things settle down, rates are generally about to fall. But people are have a real conundrum now. Should I go for a 2-year or 5-year fixed? Because will rates fall over a slightly longer period of time? What do you think? What are your thoughts, Tom?
That's a good point, that. So do I think rates are going to fall at the moment? I think, as you said, it will be depending on what goes on with the US and in the Ukraine in terms of actually giving a reduction in inflation. Get reduction in inflation, and the rates are going to fall quicker than we expected them to. So what do we look at today? Customers are starting to look at like more 2- and 3-year options, because they're like, okay, are we going to get a rate reduction in the next next few years or next month? The negative of that is we have to stress test higher. So we have to normally test the 2 and 3, anything under 5 years. We have to add, normally, if the rate's 5, we have to add potentially 2% to that. And then we have to stress test. So if it qualifies for that, great. One of the things we pride ourselves on internally is like looking at like the cumulative cost of a loan. So what is it really costing you over 2 years? What is it really costing you for 3 years, over 5 years? All in cost. So the challenge with some of the products out there, and you've probably seen them yourself, is it's a great rate. It's 4.5% with a 5% fee over 2 years. If you then work back that cumulative cost, actually it's not a great deal. So, and then if you then compare that to a 5-year deal, then it typically looks better. Obviously, we don't know what the rates are going to be in 3 or 4 years' time, but that cumulative cost is really important when sort of looking at the deals, and not just looking at the headline rates of loans as well, because the lenders are clever with that.
And also, I think, Tom, it's really important to consider the cost of refinance on an HMO. I mean, I know you've said recently that Shawbrook have introduced a switch and fix, is that you call it?
Yeah.
But if you can't switch products like that and you are going through a full refinance, the cost is huge. Like
Yeah.
to bear into. So I think it depends a little bit on your strategy too, doesn't it? You know, like if you've bought it, for example, you know, like our common strategy is buy and bridge in, do all the works, and then fix it for 5 years. But if you're thinking, oh, I'll fix it for 2 and see where the rates are, it's fine as long as you know you can switch products without having those huge refinance costs as a
Yeah.
commercial.
Yeah, and I think that's a key point there. So understanding whether the lender actually has an existing
Yeah,
product switch, because a lot of these new lenders don't, and nor do they have further advances either. So
yeah,
you've got to be quite wary about what they can and can't do at the end of the loan. We tend to have products that most lenders will offer you like a 25-year term, 5-year fix, 3-year fix, and then they put you onto standard variable rate, which is deliberate because they don't want you to stay there. They want you to refix, or they want you to refinance, or if you do stay on standard variable rate, they're delighted because they're charging a premium
yeah,
above base rate anyway on it. So yeah, it's definitely it's worth looking at costs associated with refinancing. You've got your survey costs, your legal fees. I mean, some of the tips in there to look for is if the lender's using title insurance, super useful. You can't really control the surveys. The same with the legals as well. If you can do what we call sort of joint representation on the back end of it, so you're not using both 2 sets of solicitors, again, can save cost. And again, it's just the things of where the broker market's gone is a lot of brokers in the market will use platforms like 27 Tech, you might have heard of, where they've just produced an illustration, out it goes, and it gives lots of fancy numbers and tells you the overall cost over 25 years. I'm kind of like, well, I'm not really interested in that. Like, it was actually, because let's be frank, you're going to refinance at year 3, you're going to refinance at year 5. You're constantly refinancing. So that's not the true cost of the loan. What you're really interested in is the cost over that particular period, and then what you do with it afterwards.
yeah, definitely.
Tom, one of the complaints that well, I have, as well as a lot of people in this community, is why does it all take so long? I mean, obviously we understand KYC, they want your inside leg measurements of your third pet's third cousin or whatever. But do you have any top tips to kind of saving time, right? What should we be doing on a regular basis to make sure we're ready for this financing or refinancing?
So in terms of saving time, you kind of got to look at which lenders you're going to and the level of information they want. You've also got to look at the price as well. When you've got very cheap lenders, you've typically got a huge amount of, sorry, he's frozen again. He's back. When you've got cheap lenders, you've typically got a lot more demand there. So you've got a lot more demand coming in. So as a brokerage, in terms of when that information comes in, is you've got to look at the process. So do they want information up front and want everything up before they go to survey, or do they just ask a few bits and then ask all the information retrospectively? My sort of top clients will typically give us a full pack, which they give us 3 months bank statements. They give us everything and have that pretty much in a Dropbox ready to go at all times to make refinancing easy. So
that's a really good tip, that.
Whether you are in terms of sending that information over. The other thing which is really important, and particularly if you're not working with us guys, is we teach our guys to go to pre-underwrite the bank statements. So we look through the bank statements and we look to see if there's anything unusual, or we typically know the questions that the lenders are going to ask around, whether it's ASTs, whether it's about something in the bank statement. So actually getting the guys to pre-underwriting it, not just chucking all the information in and saying, here you go, thanks very much, where's my offer? It's like actually run through it first. And if there is anything unusual in it, we then make sure that that has been covered with the underwriter on a message as it goes in. And again, if you're in the banks, if you think about these underwriters, they're sat there, they've probably got a queue of about 24 loans to look at. So if you get a poorly packaged facility in, first of all, you've got to underwrite off guard. And second of all, they're most likely to kick it back. And once they kick it back, depending on who the lender is, you're then in another 4 or 5 day turnaround.
Yeah, you kind of go back to the end of the queue again.
So,
Yeah, and that's one thing that I really like about you guys, Tom, is that you've got a whole team, so you're really on it, and you've got different people working on different aspects of the process to keep it moving along. Found that really really great.
yeah, so we like to call it packaging. So just making sure that that's been done well, it makes the process of the loan go smoothly. Also, if we do that up front as well, often we can spot that it's, you know, to give you an example of a customer, one was like, haven't done my tax returns yet, I'm not be able to provide those. So I just need a lender who's going to accept 3 months bank statements. And actually the pricing is not too dissimilar from someone from Paragon through to one of those lenders now. So it's awesome.
So you're preempting what's going to be required, aren't you? And like matching the product with that situation, the scenario.
Yeah, I think, you know, the other thing is if you ever directly speaking to an underwriter, is keep them on side. And it's something we really teach to our team, is like these guys, they're human beings at the end of the day. And obviously you might not necessarily like their decisions sometimes, but if you get them off side, they're not going to help you. So we like to, you know, also sometimes if you want them to do something, is if you suggest it yourself, then you've led the underwriter. If they suggest it, they're the heroes of the day. So sometimes you might have an idea of what you want them to do, but let them come to that conclusion themselves.
Sounds like working with blokes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. This is how my wife runs me as well.
Brilliant, Tom. And how about then the Article 4 business and Article 4, HMOs in Article 4 and outside of Article 4? And I know a big concern is always, and it comes up on each time, doesn't it, getting commercial valuations on HMOs outside of Article 4 areas. Are we seeing kind of a more willingness, a readiness on lenders to do that?
Yeah, I think
because it isn't a given, is it? It's not a given.
It's not a given. And if I'm honest, we were very reliant on probably 2 or 3 lenders doing those non-Article 4 investment valuations for us. That's expanded to about 7 now.
Okay, that's good.
And actually, I think it's the realization that if you look at what all the Article 4s are, if you're going to run that policy as a lender for an HMO point of view, you're not going to win. So, I'd also say on that point, it depends on whether it's in a low value location or a high value location. Because if you've got if I'll give you an example of one we're doing in St Albans, it's outside the Article 4 high value location. So the difference between the investment value and the market value is not hugely different. We actually often sometimes with a customer will run both ploys. We'll stick one through not bricks and mortar, and then we'll stick the same one through an investment. And I think we had one the other day and it was 650 and the investment value was 710.
Yeah. But obviously as you go further north, that isn't the case.
Isn't the case, but
the investment value is more out of line with bricks and mortar, isn't it? So would it then be fair to say that the lenders on the smaller HMOs, the 3 to 6 beds, or the kind of 5 to 6 beds rather, are looking for significant works and a change to the property to kind of justify them giving that investment value?
They're looking for en suites. They're looking for, you know, how much have you spent customizing the building. There used to be the argument that anyone could just buy next door and do the works, but actually if you now look at the works, they're often 150, 200,000 pounds to convert those HMOs. So it's not so much the case now. It's not as easy as everybody thinks it is. So I think the lenders have got more relaxed about it. It's a growing market, and you know, they're also cash cows. So. And I think I sort of mentioned this before and previously with you, that you've also got to look at where is the bricks and mortar value now and how long will that bricks and mortar value take to catch the investment value. albeit you could argue the investment value is growing if your rents continue to grow as well, because you've got a yield on those types of valuations, so you'll get growth on both sides. So I think I've been involved in the HMO market since 2001.
Showing your age, Tom.
Yes. And it has completely, obviously it's completely changed, but it's gone from being a space which was, you know, relatively like probably typically larger properties, bigger conversions, through to actually lots and lots of small HMOs now. But the quality of the space now compared to what it was in 2001, 2002 is you're seeing these rooms which, I'm not being funny, if I was young, I would have moved into one. What I was seeing around that time was, you know, they weren't particularly nice to live in. You used to share in someone's house downstairs and they cook your breakfast in the morning. So I think the lenders have, you still get some, I think the lending market's changed, and I think in the nicest possible way, a lot of the old guard kind of retired. So it's not so much of the HMO is not such of a new market these days. It's becoming a established market.
But obviously somebody who is doing extensive works, in order to kind of mitigate that risk and have some, because if you're buying something outside of Article 4 and you're spending 100 grand on it, like you say, or 150 grand, and you're hoping for this commercial valuation afterwards, would it be fair to say that a really good way to mitigate that is to actually use the kind of product that we know that we use with you, where you get a really good idea of the investment value at the outset? Would that be fair to say?
Okay, I'll just say, Tom, just that if you can make that, we'll make that a final answer. We could talk all day, but we're
then we'll go
quite
to
a lot.
Q&A. Yeah, but I think that's a really important point,
though. Yeah, no, absolutely, and we'll do some questions from the guys in the room. Thanks, Tom.
If you can de-risk, if you're buying a property outside an Article 4, you can use the bridging product or conversion product to get a valuation from one of the valuers that they will use on the back end as well. So it completely de-risks it. With someone like Shawbrook, for example, who don't fund works, will lend 85%. As long as those works are done within 6 months, they use that existing valuation.
Yeah.
So it de-risks that particular risk. And also, if I'm honest, often our customers get in and get these properties out within the 6 months. So use it for
I think that's a brilliant thing for everybody to know who's doing that. Really good. Okay, all right.
I've got a load more questions for you, Tom, but unfortunately we've run out of time. But we're going to do some questions here. But Lynn Johnson has asked a question. Lynn, did you want to get on camera or should I read it out? You're on camera. Hello, Lynn.
Hi.
How are you?
You can still read it, Kunle. It's fine.
Hi, Lynn.
No, go for it. No, talk to Tom. Go for it, Lynn. Good to see you.
Yeah, I was just listening to you talking about all the underwriting and so forth. I was wondering if you got any thoughts or any tips when you're using an investor to provide the deposit and getting the information around what they have to provide and so forth.
Good question.
In terms of with the lenders, it's knowing who those investors are, and what agreements are in place as well, whether that money's coming in from a loan or whether it's considered as equity. That's hugely important because obviously it has a big impact, in particular on the conversion side and bridging side, of which lenders that you can use at the outset. So refinance lenders are normally more relaxed about it, but just understanding what agreements you've got in place and documenting that day one is really useful.
And what are the pros and cons of the different kinds of agreements that you might have with an investor?
I think if you look at it in this way, if it's a loan into the company, sometimes we'll get that comment from the lender was, well, technically it's 100% funded then, isn't it, Tom? It's that, well, they're right, it is 100% funded, but then obviously they have a first legal charge, and often the secondary lender doesn't, or might have a second legal charge behind the property. So it's just understanding at the outset, before you approach the lenders, which lenders will and won't accept that is super important. I think you don't hear it so much these days, but you often hear that, you know, that lenders want hurt money in a deal, you know, is they want to see that if it goes wrong, but you're going to lose something walking away from it, which, let's be frank, but most of the times if you're getting your projects right, you're not leaving a huge amount of cash in. So it's it is recycling. But again, I think the opinion's slightly going away from that sort of piece. But yeah, if you go from an
I still hear it, Tom.
I still hear it, yeah. Yeah, want some hurt money in a deal. So
Absolutely.
yeah, if it's equity in there, which, let's be fair, unless it's from family money, it's typically rare that it's equity. It's normally a loan. Again, understanding which lenders will allow you to do loans behind your facilities is also, and also which lenders will allow you to put second charges behind your facility. So if you are building up your portfolio, will they allow you to have a second charge above the 75%? So again, it's knowing that at the outset, just so that your equity's not trapped later on.
Brilliant. Thank you, Tom.
Fabulous. Thank you.
Anything else, Lynn?
No,
okay.
no, that's it. That's fine. That's good.
Brilliant. Okay, Cressy. Is it Cressy? Am I saying it right? Hello, Cressy.
Hello. Hi, good
Hello.
evening. It
Hi,
is right,
Cassie.
but actually Vlad's next to me, so he's asking the question if that's okay.
Hi, Vlad.
Hi, Vlad.
Good evening,
Hi.
everyone. Yeah, it's just
Evening.
really interesting, the actual discussion. Yeah, my question, well, our question was, is it possible to get a mortgage for an HMO if you have multiple investors for the same deal?
Yes, is the answer to that. So
Yes.
again, you have to pick your lenders. You have to know how many parties they will accept on the loan. We've done it where we've had like 8 or 9 shareholders. So you can do, yeah. So yeah, and we again, that dictates which lender we will go to at the outset. If you're looking at the cheap lenders out there, like the Kent Reliances, you know, you'll see on their policies typically they don't want more than 4 shareholders, 4 directors. But yes, you can on that sort of thing.
I love that. 9 shareholders. I'd love to see the ILA on those, the ILA bill.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Cressy and
Great.
Vlad, do you have any other questions? Good to see you guys.
No, not for now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Brilliant. Okay, well, I might sneak my one in. You know, I always talk to these guys about taking control of the valuation. And what you were saying about the investment value and market value and the fact that they're different is absolutely key. So do you have any top tips in terms of taking control of your valuation, making sure that that valuation comes to what you think it really is, what you're convinced? Obviously, it has to be that you really understand the market and you're right. But, you know, any top tips? Finally, Tom.
Yeah, so I think the first thing is, you know, looking at your comparables around you, in particular HMOs. Have there been any HMO sales? That's often a problem because often there's not. A lot of people don't sell their HMOs, or certainly didn't used to sell their HMOs. So it then kind of brings you to the room rent and the room rates. So let's say you're getting £850 a month, £750 a month. What's the comparison around the rooms, and making sure we get our customers to set up like a pack of, here my values are, here my rents are, this is how I got to my valuation. I think the other thing which we encourage customers to do is, let's say if you're going through like a VAS panel, they're going to give you 3 or 4 different surveyors. Like, often these guys are willing to speak to you. I certainly have conversations with them, and this is not us trying to catch them out or trying to push them into a particular corner, but it's like, we were doing one in Swindon, and this is a super good example where we were like, right, we're in Swindon, some new locations, not many HMOs around there, and we spoke to a couple of surveyors, and one was really friendly. It was like, it's a great location, there's loads of demand there, we're going to be looking at a 10% yield. And that meant that instead of getting a £300,000 valuation, which he'd had through Paragon, Kent Reliance, through another broker, we managed to get a £450,000 valuation and refinance out of that particular deal, which was really needed. So yeah, don't be afraid to speak to the local surveyors. Again, treat them like underwriters, be really kind to them. Don't push them. You've got to be careful not to. You've got to manage them carefully. But once you get to know them, one of the things we do in house is when we're doing all these HMO valuations, we keep like an internal tally. We don't tell people addresses, but we looking at all the HMO deals we're doing. That went to that lender, went to that surveyor. What did it value at? What was the yield at? So if we've seen that we've done 4 valuations in a location, and Lorraine, you will often have this discussion, won't we? Which is like who are the surveyors which we know, are pretty consistent in that particular space. It can be an anomaly that if you take Precise and they send Connells out to do your HMO valuation, you might get lucky. You normally don't. So, with the exception of if it's an Insider in Article 4, and I have had a few exceptions where they have gone out and have given it a decent investment value. So
but there's more of a risk, isn't there? I mean, I think it's great if you know how valuers are, evaluations, you've got far more chance of getting it as well, haven't you? If you know who's giving what, and the comparables for it.
The other place we often use, and we're part of lots of WhatsApp group, if you're not sure and you're part of lots of, put it on the WhatsApp group, has anyone used a valuer in this area? And they might give you a few suggestions. So we do utilize the base that we have sometimes to kind of go, okay, is there someone in there we're not aware of? I think my other tip, which is a really important one, is let's say you've gone to a lender and they use VAS panel, right? And they go and do a valuation. You want it to be 500,000, and they come back and it's 400,000. If you then go to another lender who uses VAS panel, and you then get a valuation of 500,000, those guys, VAS panel basically will tell the other lender is that we've had 2 valuations on this, and then do this lovely thing for us, which we really hate, where they then do like an internal investigation, which eventually forces the other valuer to down value their valuation.
To down value, yes.
So my other top tip is, if you've already used VAS, we then need to use a different panel manager or a different lender to make sure that we don't get hit with the same problem.
Absolutely. That's all the reason why you have to take control of your valuations, because you have to get it right first time. Otherwise, it's a sliding. If someone's valued at 400, someone sees that valuation, then they're very proven that it's their PI on the line. So absolutely, thank you for that. It's great to hear that from the horse's mouth. Michelle Cooper, hello, good to see you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me on.
Hi, Michelle.
Hi. I'm working on a deal at the moment, and we're looking at vendor financing, quite a few millions into it. They are really, really concerned about taking the second charge on the property, and they're saying they want first charge instead. Is there any lenders out there that wouldn't necessarily want the first charge?
Yeah, it's more it's got an expense to it, but yeah. So they want first charge.
Yes.
I presume they're putting a pretty considerable amount of money into the deal.
Probably about 2 million.
Yeah, and I guess if they're funding more than the second chargee, then it's kind of fair enough. But you could then look at a second behind it. It comes with expense. We do it, and we have different lenders that do it. And you're typically looking, in particular on short-term finance, anywhere between 15 and 24%.
Wow. Okay.
In terms of cost. If it's long-term investment and it's a second charge, again, lenders, if you've got a first charge in front and they've crystallized what that charge is, it's always good to understand it, because we've had that before, and we've actually then spoken to that particular lender and said, look, we can still do the loan, we can still have a second charge, you just can't have the first charge, because it basically stops you from being able to actually physically do what you need to do.
Okay.
It'd be good to understand in detail the circumstances behind that one, and we can probably help you with it.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
Think creatively, Michelle.
Yeah,
sounds like a real challenge, but I'm sure you will.
We can help you be creative
out there, which is great to hear, Tom. Thank you. Tom, it's been fantastic. hearing your top tips and seeing your approach and looking into your crystal ball. Thank you so much. Lorraine, is there anything else that we want to
No, we're only 15 minutes over.
ask Tom?
I've got to go do the gymnastics pickup now. So.
Brilliant. I think we can let you go. I mean, we'll talk a little bit more now, but thanks so much, Tom. If you want to,
yeah, thank you, Tom.
My pleasure. Lovely to meet everybody. Thank you.
Yeah, and it's fantastic to talk to you. Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank
Have a
you,
lovely
Michael.
evening.
Thanks. Bye.
Okay.
Thanks, Tom. Thank you.
As you said, Lorraine, it's enjoyable, and we're running over time.
We're going to wrap up. There's a couple of things we need to say, isn't there?
I was going to ask, actually, just throw it out. Were there any other questions specific to Article 4, or any comments or any interesting stories that people have found? I will invite young Master Thomas if he wants to join as well. I normally do throw people, hospital passes, but if anyone wants to join now and talk about or ask about Article 4, please do.
Or anything that wasn't clear, or like anything anybody doesn't understand about it, or...
Hi, Ian.
Hi there. We're looking at property today, and I was going through planning portals to see what had happened around it. And it was interesting. One had been turned down for going for a certificate of lawful development, because although they're in that particular area, the planning guy had said he wanted proof from before 2019 when the Article 4 came in, and although they had one AST from before 2019, they still wouldn't accept it. It obviously wasn't enough. It was one room out of 4 or 5, and there were other sporadic ones over the period. But anyway, they rejected it. And then another one had applied for a 4-bed license for a non-HMO in the Article 4. It had been downgraded to a 3-bed to meet space standards, but then they rejected it, and then they passed it because they said on the first assessment, they'd looked at all the licensed properties in the street, but in that area there's selective licenses, and then they realised on the second pass through that there weren't many HMOs. Most of them were just buy-to-lets, so they actually allowed it. So a 3-bed was allowed in the Article 4 area. What I was going to ask was, do you know if I've heard it said various times, if you can prove there aren't X number of HMOs within 400 yards or X Y meters, do you know if those conditions are getting a same nationally, or are they, like everything else, varying by each local authority as to what they will and won't accept in terms of local competition or overcrowding?
Very much local.
Right.
Yeah,
very much.
My understanding is
That's my understanding, Lorraine.
Totally local to the council. Like the chances of getting anything in Article 4 in Leicester is like 0.
And the thing is,
it's a 10% rule in a lot of places, isn't it? But yeah, certain cities are just a no, I think, because they're just all
within a certain radius, Lorraine. But the thing is, Article 4 is meant to be a tool of control. So, Article 4 is very much local, and therefore you need to read the actual Article 4 directive to see whether, what it actually includes and what it doesn't include, and all of that. And of course, then you have the interpretation of those rules. They might say, well, density, and then they put in a local rule, which is, invariably a thumb in the
By
air.
Definition, it's local, isn't it? Like you say, because it's a tool of control in a specific area, so it is going to be local, isn't it?
Absolutely.
And okay, the reason I was looking was particular property we're looking at. It's got a license, but as you said, a license doesn't prove planning. The local searches that were part of the auction pack showed that various planning applications have been made years ago, and they'd actually not even spotted on the search that the last planning application had given it permission to operate as an HMO. However, that was in 1994.
Wow.
Well prior to any Article 4 area coming in 2019. So I wasn't sure whether that would carry forward and give us the right. I did speak to the duty planner today, and her conclusion was that yes, if it was accepted as an HMO in 1994, and it still looks like the same beast, that would be okay, but she couldn't guarantee it. You know, she was saying, to my mind, it would be, but you know, she couldn't guarantee it. But then, I don't know who's going to challenge it at the end of the day.
There's a recurring theme here, Ian. You know, I would speak to a planner. I speak to a local planner, and that planner might say, I mean, I'm not guaranteeing it, but that if that planner knows their onions, they might say, look, you know, this is the way to go. Probably, you know, apply or sort of seek some sort of letter of clarification. Say, look, we have this evidence, this evidence, this evidence, and according to all these directives, there's no other evidence out there. We want you to confirm that this is an HMO. According to planning, and then they will send a letter saying they agree, and then you have it in writing, and that will take away that uncertainty. The only other thing, Lorraine, just one moment, is that, you know, try and shift the risk to the seller. As I said, it's a buyer's market. So shift the risk to the seller. Offer on the basis subject to this being done, but definitely speak to a really good local planner. Lorraine?
And just the very fact that if you're going to need lending on it, that the lenders are asking for it as a tick box thing more and more. So even if they're okay with it, it's okay if you're buying it cash and you don't need lending, but if you're going to need lending at some point on it, either bridging or term finance, that the tick box is going to be, where's your LDC? More and more and more and more. So you're going to end up doing retrospective planning anyway, surely, to get an LDC. With all that information, that is kind of part of your document, your application pack, is that proof that it was given, you know, authority to be an HMO back then. But you're still going to need, you still really want to be sure, you still need that. I don't know the way that I see it, you still need that, don't you, to get the lending.
Thank you.
We had an instance where we thought we'd got a document from the council because they had a registry for Article 4. So the council had actually done a piece of paper to say it had got permitted use as an HMO, and the lender wouldn't accept it. And when we went back to the council for them to confirm, they said, oh, we can't do that either. You know, you're going to have to put in for a certificate of lawfulness. Okay, we had this letter from back when saying it was okay, yeah, but that doesn't mean anything. We abandoned the registry. It was a voluntary registry and we abandoned it, so we can't confirm that. So yeah, it's that lender requirements that are becoming more and more that way. It's a kind of tick box for them. Yeah.
Well, one other observation that I would say is that, you know, sometimes you will go to planning and, you know, computer says, you know, no. And, you know, there is something to be said if it's the right deal and you've got the time and, you know, resources to, you know, to be persistent and to seek it. If you know it, you know, that it is right. So there's something to be said for that. And that I think is what, you know, you've given an example of there, Ian. So thank you. So any other thoughts or observations in terms of Article 4? Can't see any hands up.
I think we're good, Kunle. I think we should.
Well, no, we've got one more who is actually the very first. Oh, hold on. Bob, why don't you ask your question?
Hi, good evening, everybody. Thanks for the presentation, and Tom, who's left. Kunle, I think I understood, perhaps I did or didn't, you in your introduction about definitions of Article 4 areas, that the Article 4 can also apply to other strategies other than HMO. Did I understand that correctly?
Correct, yes. It's a planning tool. It's a way for local authorities to remove, you know, automatic planning, so that they can control the neighborhood, control the local neighborhood. So yeah, so if,
typically, what other strategies does that apply to then, please?
Not so much strategies, more for employing planning restrictions. But it's feasible that, you know, if there's a high concentration, as I know, for example, in Northumberland, there is a high concentration of holiday lets, right? And there's local unrest or whatever, and it reaches politicians. It's absolutely feasible that Article 4 may be used to restrict holiday lets, or maybe used to impose restrictions. So, for example, I was searching for a holiday let in Kings Lynn, some seaside resort which escapes at the moment, but someone had bought a beautiful large bed and breakfast, and they converted it to a family home, and someone wanted to go and go back to that bed and breakfast and book a room, and they couldn't because someone was living there. So that person complained to the local council, and the local council said, hold on, there's a planning restriction, you cannot convert this to a dwelling place, you have to convert it back. So they were selling it cheap. I didn't have the readies at the time, but they were selling it cheap because they had to sell, because the council had forced them. So, on this stretch of, coast, they wanted to have, period properties that were bed and breakfasts. Obviously, you can you can modernize it and make it into an apart hotel or something like that, but you can't move in and live there with your family and your pet and seaside resort for a reduced price. So as I said, it's a planning tool, and it is used in all sorts of different ways. Does that answer your question, Bob?
Yeah. Have you heard of it applying to things like buy-to-lets of the vanilla variety?
Not yet, but it's there. It can be used. It has to be agreed. I think it's something that has to be passed through. I think depending on, and again, you probably have to ask a planner, because don't take my word for this, but I'm not sure if it has to go to national government or local government. But no, I haven't personally. I haven't. Lorraine, have you heard of Article 4 being used for
things like
buy-to-let?
protecting conservation areas and stuff like that, but it's I haven't heard of anything in relation to single buy-to-lets. No.
Chris was nodding mightily just then. Any input to this, Chris?
Sorry.
I was reserving you till the end, Chris. Are you there? Hello,
yeah,
mate.
I'm here. It's been a long day.
Yeah.
Any input in terms of this question?
No, sorry.
Okay, no worries. I was actually reserving you to the end because, Chris, you were the person that asked the very first question. But yeah, Bob, is that it?
Thank you very much. Yes. Brilliant.
Okay, I think we're going to wrap it up.
Yeah.
Chris asked the very, very first question, and Chris, it's been, as you said, it's been a long day. It was really around the Renters' Rights Bill. And that's a big, heavy subject. And that's something that's coming into an act probably in the next couple of months. And it's something that perhaps we can tackle another time, because it's so huge. There's a lot being said around it. And we all know that the wise and prudent thing is to make sure that until it comes actually into effect, a lot of it is hearsay and a lot of it is stoking up. There's articles talking about criminal landlords, no other type of landlords, just criminal ones. It's not nice as someone who we're all agony aunts, and we take care of our tenants as much as we can, to kind of be referred to in derogatory terms, across the board. But there will be a lot of groundbreaking changes, I think, because of that. You're nodding your head, Lorraine. Anything to say on that?
No. I definitely don't think it's something to start talking about tonight. As you can see, I'm thinking it's time to wrap up, Kunle. Come on.
Brilliant. Well, thank you, Lorraine. And thanks to Tom for joining us. Thanks to all you guys who joined, and the dozens of you who were also not on screen. Let's keep up the conversation on social media and all the different elements, and we will see you next month. Take care. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Thank you. Thanks for joining.